Okay. Oh, that'll be nice.
I'll start by saying that with a lady as sociable and as loving and lovable as Doris, it's a beautiful acknowledgement of her personality by having so many people here. By having a full house and people of young and old age and, all kind of things. She would not have wanted a quiet funeral service where everyone just walked in and sat and lit a few candles and, said a few quiet words. So this is exactly what we would want for her. We're here to give special honors, to give thanks, to show appreciation and love to our beloved Doris Wesoky. She was a beloved wife, beloved mother, beloved sister, beloved grandmother, great-grandmother, beloved friend, and personality, organizer, activist for the entire Cleveland community. She was able to live many years, but not long enough. Losing her is a difficult thing. A lady with so much connection to her family, so much personality, always so much to give. It's never enough that we've had her for all these years. But in her spirit of being strong and being tough and moving forward, we will do the best we can to be strong today for ourselves and for her. We start with a selection from the Psalms, the 23rd Psalm. Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai roi lo iksar, Bina isteshech yarbitzeni, al mei menuchos yenachaleni, Nafshi ishovev yancheni v'maglei tzedek leman shemo, Gam ki elech begeit salmaves, lo yirara ki ata imadi, Shiftecha umishantecha, hema yenachamuni, Tarach lefanai shulchan neged sarai, Dishante v'shemen roshi, kosi revaya, Achtov v'chesed yirdefuni, kol yemei chayai, V'shavte bebeis Adonai la'orech yamim. A Psalm of David. God is my shepherd, I shall not lack. In lush meadows he lays me down. Beside tranquil waters he leads me. He restores my soul. He leads me on paths of justice for his name's sake. Though I walk in the valley overshadowed by death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in view of my torments. You anointed my head with oil, my cup overflows. May only goodness and kindness pursue me all the days of my life. I shall dwell in the house of the Lord for many long days. It's an important Jewish tradition to read what is called the Eshet Chayil, the woman of valor, which is a selection from the Proverbs, and it lists the special qualities of this special woman. We say, Eshet Chayil miyimsa, v'rachok mipnini michra, bachtach ba'lev bala, v'shel leksar. Gamalsu tov v'lora, kol yemei chayecha, darshet semro fishtim, betas bechapetz kapecha. Haisa keni socher, mimerchak tavi lachma, betakam beod laila, biditinteref, levesa v'chuk narasecha. Zamama sadeh v'tikachechu, mipri kapecha natukarem, hagra ba'oz masnecha, betame tzoresecha. Tama ki tov sachra, lo yichbe b'laila neira, yedecha shilcha v'kishor, v'kapecha samchu fale. Kappa parseleani, ve'yadecha shilcha le'evyon, l'sira me'besa mishalig, ki kol besa levus shanim. Kamu v'nech v'ashura, bala v'yahala, rabos banos asochayil, b'yatalis al kulana. Sheker achein v'hevel hayofi, isha yiras adonai hi tishalel, tenu la mipri yadecha, v'halucha v'sharim ma'asecha. An accomplished woman, who can find? Far beyond pearls is her value. Her husband's heart relies on her, and he shall lack no fortune. She repays his good, but never his harm, all the days of her life. She seeks out wool and linen, and her hands work willingly. She rises while it's nighttime and gives food to her household. She envisions a field and buys it. From the fruit of her handiwork, she plants a vineyard. With strength she girds her loins and invigorates her arms. Her hand she stretches out to the distaff, and her palms support the spindle. She spreads out her palm to the poor, and extends her hands to the destitute. She makes a cloak to sell and delivers a belt to the peddler. Strength and majesty are her raiment. She joyfully awaits the last day. She opens her mouth with wisdom, and a lesson of kindness is on her tongue. Her children arise and praise her. Her husband, he lauds her. Many daughters have amassed achievement, but you have surpassed them all. False is grace and vain is beauty. A God-fearing woman, she should be praised. Give her the fruits of her hands, and let her be praised in the gates by her very own deeds. I just want to start by saying that in the rabbi in these circumstances, where I didn't know the family except for the last few days, and I didn't know Doris, I feel like I do know her very well, and I know her family very well. Because this is a family who knows how to express, how to tell stories, and how to give you the emotions and the excitement and the feelings of the moment. And that in the conversations I've had with them, at Menorah Park and at the house, there's just such a sense of the love and the warmth and the connection and the knowledge of their mom. And same thing with the grandkids and the great-grandkids. So I'm here sharing with you things that they would have said themselves in their own voice. But it's not an easy time to give over these stories, for the children to come up here and speak. So it's the role of the rabbi to assist and to share, to be a storyteller of sorts in these regards. In the Jewish tradition, the funeral service is about honor. It's about acknowledging the great things of a person. But also there's far more to it. Spiritually, there's the idea that we know that Doris is hearing us. She's hearing the words that we're saying of how much we noticed how great she was. We noticed how special she was. And all the work and all the effort and all the tough times that she went through to be who she was, she says at this very moment, her soul says it was worth it because all of us notice, all of us remember, and we will continue to remember. But lastly, one of the most important reasons we come here today is for ourselves, is that we need inspiration. We need to say, wow, someone like Doris, look what she accomplished, look what she did, look at all she became, and we want to become just like her. We want to follow in her footsteps. So her stories, her life, should always be an inspiration for us. And that's the point of some of the words that we share here today. Her Hebrew name was Devorah Matel Bas Lazer. She was born March 10th, 1934, in the famous Mount Sinai Hospital. The family lived in Cleveland Heights off of Northcliffe Road, and her parents, Louis and Anna Berger, raised her very well. Her family was at first a small family, just her two parents and her sister Eleanor, of blessed memory, and it was looking pretty quiet, pretty standard for the most part. Then all of a sudden, something seemed to be happening with Mrs. Berger. She developed something bigger than it was before, and to the surprise of Eleanor, she was about to have a sister in a very short amount of time. In those days, they didn't tell the kids, oh, you're going to have a baby sister soon. Get ready. Get her some presents. She's coming in 9 months. Right? In those days, she just sort of came. And so that's how Doris came to Eleanor, and that's how Doris came to the family. And Louis used to say, well, they make a joke that life truly begins at 40. And that's exactly what happened to him. His young Doris, his second daughter, would come when he was at the ripe age of 40 years old. But everything worked out for this family. They adjusted to many new things. And Eleanor adjusted to being a great big sister, learning to share her toys, and continuing to be a good big sister up until her late age when she passed away just 5 years ago. Doris attended Heights High School in those grand times when it was a gigantic, super amazing school. And it was so big, so many kids were there, that she actually had to have 2 different classes, because all the kids wouldn't fit in the classroom. You can imagine she was a big lady on campus, so sociable, so lovable, so involved. And in those days, they had sororities, not just in college, but they had high school sororities. And you can see her being very much part of that whole social club. But for her, with all the social things going on, the main social thing was her husband-to-be, Bernard. She was 17 years old, and he was 24, and they were destined to be an item together. The way the story goes is that they were both on dates with other people at Cumberland Pool, and Bernard caught sight of Doris, and it was love at first sight. And if I'm not mistaken, even though he had another young lady to take home, he offered a ride to Doris as well, because he didn't want to miss the opportunity to get to know her. And it was truly meant to be. Bernard moved from Pittsburgh, his family, to Cleveland. And when they married, she was 19 years old, Doris. And Bernard knew that there was no way he was going back to Pittsburgh. He was married to a true Cleveland girl. And he knew that Doris wanted to be here in Cleveland, to be there for her mother, to be there with her family, with no exceptions. She settled in as a homemaker, and she kept a very tight, super clean house. It was the 50s, of course, and the furniture was covered in plastic, and everything was immaculate, right? You can imagine the scene, certainly. And with all this cleanliness came a little bit of a mess that she was able to control, and the mess was worth it in the form of her 2 daughters that would come along a couple years apart. And these daughters and this growing family brought great joy to their father and their mother. I said it already too many times, because you know already, but Doris was very social. And you can imagine her as the 50s, 60s homemaker, always involved in projects and organizations as much as she could. And the language that the kids used was that she was always being installed into different organizations. Right? Most people, they join organizations or they get to be a member of organizations, but they installed Doris because they knew she was a go-getter. She had the ability to be on top of everything, get things done, and to make your organization even greater than what it would have been without her. And these places where she was installed included Hadassah and the American Medical Center, which was a cancer research hospital. And Doris was all about getting multiple people involved, not just herself. And at a young age, her children became fundraisers. She installed them with the duty of raising funds and raising money. I'm sure their cuteness and their kiddishness was very successful in raising the money that she herself didn't have times to raise. Even though Doris was all about housekeeping and organizing, she had plenty of time, for her Bernard, for her real love interest in life. He had to work the weekends. He didn't have the usual Saturdays and Sundays off, but Tuesday was their day. So you can picture the 2 of them cleaning the house, if it wasn't clean already, but they were cleaning somewhat the house with their vodka tonics in hand and some good music, and they had the real time of their lives doing what they enjoyed doing the most. And this was the secret of their success, the secret of 64 years of marriage. And the secret that Bernard knew was he always listened to Doris. And so as long as he listened to her, everything would go well. If you disagreed with her too much, you never know what would happen, and it just wasn't worth it. She always knew best anyways. So the kids described the classic scene in the house. It was an evening, and there was the click of the maj tiles. There was tons of people. There was a heavy cloud of smoke, lots of laughter, and loud voices. Right? That was the quiet suburban setting of Doris's home. And it was no wonder that one of the things that Laurel and Denise complained the most about to me was that they could never sleep on those maj nights. There was just too much partying and too much excitement going on downstairs. Her trademark, of course, was her Bel Air cigarettes. And we try not to be too positive about cigarette smoking these days, but you can imagine the elegance that she surely had and the calmness and the coolness. I can't think of all the words, but there was a certain thing, about her smoking. And the kids said that, Mom would be, doing her cigarettes, and she would snap her fingers, and they knew it was time to bring the ashtray over, So those were the days, But the thing about her was, as much as she loved her social life and her smoking, and it was part of her essence, the thing she loved more was her grandchildren. So when 4-year-old Brienne said, Mommy, or Grandma, I'm concerned about all that lung stuff you got going on, all that black stuff that's going to be going on in your lungs. I don't know if you should be doing that anymore. What did she do? She stopped immediately. On the spot, she never saw another Bel Air again, because that was something that her granddaughter wanted above everything. I guess in some ways she was a mixture of the 50s times. You do everything like everyone else, but you also got to be creative and do your own thing. She had the Jell-O molds that everyone else made, and she had many of the same concoctions that many people made in those times, but she made it with her own special touch. So she had the Jell-O with the cherries, with the walnuts inside. She had the unique soups that were a blend of things you were used to and things that we were not so used to. But cooking was her way of showing a lot of love and caring for her family. And she had a lot of traditions that you had to follow. Like if you had sociable crackers, you have to have a glass of tomato juice at the same time. We don't know about such rules, but she had those rules about what just went together and what was right. Her love was preparing not only food in general, but preparing for the holidays, for making them a special time and place for the gathering her family. And one of her most famous gathering methods was for the Passover Seder. Right? In those days, yes, there weren't a lot of books available, and, there weren't as many Haggadahs that were customized according to your own particular tradition and approach to things. But there must have been some, You just take a Maxwell House Haggadah, you cut out a few pages, you skip around a lot, no problem. But for her, she had to make her own abridged Haggadah. And I understand from the family, this was one of their highlights. She sat there with her typewriter, she wrote out her own language for the Haggadah. And there was lots of mistakes, there were lots of things that didn't seem to, work quite right, but that's what gave it character, and that's what made it really special. It was her own thing. She taught the family how much family meant, not just by saying it, but through her very own example. Every Saturday, that was the day to go see her mom. She would drag Denise and Laurel, and they would go see her mom like clockwork. No matter how busy they were, no matter what the weather was, it was always very important to get there. But the main impediment for Doris in getting places, of course, was the car. Right? She was not known to be the greatest driver. In fact, she was quite dangerous on the road. And the kids described that one of the things that was very scary was that even though she wasn't a great driver, and what do you do when you're a bad driver? You find a parking space way at the end of the parking lot, right? Where it's simple to get in, simple to get out. But that was not her way. She always wanted the best parking space, the one right in the front of the May Company. And so even though her driving wasn't so good, she made sure that she negotiated somehow into those special spots. But when you have a lady who has such a big heart, things that have two legs get a lot of love, but you have plenty of space for things with more than two legs. And she had a real heart for animals. She really loved them. And there was a dog named Muffin, which might as well be a family member, because he was very important in the many stories that her family told. And I guess it wasn't a coincidence that Muffin had the same birthday as her mother. So I don't know how people know dogs' birthdays, but somehow they knew, which tells you a lot about the family. The family enjoyed being together, go figure. They had a lot of fun together in many different environments. One of their biggest highlights was going to the little camper in Streetsboro, where they had a little place to hang out by the lake. They had a little general store. And, this was simple times, a fun way to be together as a family. But of course, when they had time, they would go on cross-country trips as much as they could, drive from Cleveland to California. But if you had a little dog in your car, that means you couldn't go to restaurants, right? Because restaurants don't like dogs. So they would travel across the country without a single restaurant, sitting session, because they didn't want to leave Muffin out of the picture. I'm sure they thought about leaving Muffin in the car, but that just wasn't appropriate, I imagine. But the thing about her love of her family, was that she not only got to love her family, in one size, but she got to see her family grow. She got to see the addition of sons-in-laws, she got to see the addition of grandchildren and great-grandchildren. And I got to know Ken a little bit, and I know that he came into this family at a very young time, quite early in the picture. And as Laurel's boyfriend, and then later on as the husband, in the high school. And he was able to get very close to his mother-in-law and see how much she cared for him and how much he cared for her. And, the very special mother and daughter connections. When I was at Menora Park and you guys were just sitting with her, you had such a sense of peace, that some people can't just sit there when someone is so sick. But you felt, this is my mom, she's done everything for me, we just need to be with her. And, I noticed how you two sat with her, even in the hardest of times. And one of the coolest things I heard about your family was that you don't often hear about a mother and daughter who work together in the same place, so let alone having a great time, Can you imagine being the boss? I don't know if the boss is here today, where you hire a mother and daughter and they're always laughing and they're always joking and they're always being silly and they're supposed to be working, so you don't have a problem with just one person, but a daughter and her mother. But again, that just tells you about the uniqueness of Doris and the uniqueness of the family that she raised. So clearly she was loved by and cherished by her daughters, their spouses, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. And I think today we certainly will remember her, but she would probably tell us not to be too sad. Don't cry too much. Don't be too sad, because I left you with a lot of things. She left us with great lessons. She taught us how to laugh. She taught us how to be strong. She taught us the value of family, and she just taught us how to be. So it will not be easy, but we definitely will continue to remember her and love her and miss her very much. And as we say in Jewish tradition, we say that her memory should be for a blessing. That instead of her memory being only sad, her memory is going to bless us. It's going to give us good things to come. It's going to keep us strong, keep us happy, and keep thinking of laughing instead of times when we could be crying. So thank you so much for this family and everyone for sharing her with me. Such quite an amazing lady, and I hope she would be pleased with our words. But as the rabbi representing the family, I hope you enjoyed some of the things I shared. I hope they were meaningful. But the real dessert comes from the actual people who got to know her, from the family itself. So I welcome Denny, who's going to be representing all of her grandchildren and all of their personality and all their stories.
All right. Feel very privileged, I think, obviously, to speak for all of my cousins and my sisters and, the rest of the grandkids or great-grandkids as well. And, as I sat here thinking about what am I going to say, how do you come up here and say something? One of the first things as I was reading through some of the notes that Brian sent me was a reminder that, Brian was the favorite, obviously, so we'll give her that one today, and I'll take the number 2 spot. That's fine. And the second in thinking about Grammy was just like, wow, never a dull moment, right to the end, middle of a thunderstorm, on your. So Brian and I, talked about that a little bit, and it was something. But we have a lot of great memories, and talking to my sisters, talking to my cousins, the camper in Streetsboro that the rabbi mentioned was an enormous part of all of us growing up, and a really amazing experience to go out there on the 4th of July, on Memorial Day, that you always shut down by Labor Day, so I don't remember if we went out there or not, but, another one actually where there was an interesting overlap with my sister and Lane was talking about the ice cream sundaes, and to this day, Lane still thinks about them and how amazing they were. So, I think that to sit here and try and pick any one moment to encapsulate the relationship with them and what they meant for all of us is a really difficult thing to do. And, I think we're, more than anything, incredibly grateful for the influence they had on us growing up, for everything they did for us. We spent a lot of time with them, and, some kids I think grew up and, maybe their grandparents lived in Florida or wherever else, and for them it was, I think, unthinkable to do that. And, one of the things as you're trying to process grief and work through these things is you sit there and you think about some of this and you go, well, to me one of the blessings in a way was the fact that, it was, I imagine, very difficult living for 5 more years with my grandfather, and whatever belief system you might hold, I know people have differing things that they believe in, but, they are together now in some way, shape, or form, and that's also a blessing. And as the rabbi mentioned as well, it's very much a blessing about their memory, the things they meant for us and what they did. And for me, one of the more poignant ones I was trying to think about coming up to today was, what was my memory? Because there were a lot. There were a lot we grew up with. There were a lot of different things. And probably one of the most poignant ones for me was actually as an adult. I live out of state, and I was getting ready to get married to my wife, very similar to kind of what my grandfather went through moving from Pennsylvania to Ohio. And I asked her, because I didn't know what my grandfather would say necessarily or how much candor I would get from him, but I asked her, what was your take, what was Papa's take on this? And she said, as long as he was with me, everything was okay. And, it was sort of a relieving thing to hear that as you're coming up on those kinds of decisions in life and say, all right, you know what, everything's great. So, we love her dearly, and we miss her and we're more than anything just grateful for all the time we had with them. So thank you all for being here today, and be well.
Thank you so much, Denny, for sharing all the words of the grandchildren. So immediately following the services today, we're going to go en route in procession to the Sinai Cemetery, which is located on Psalm Center and White Road in Mayfield Village. And then the family will receive friends at the residence of Denise Decker and Jeffrey Salcombe, which is 2005 Winchester Road, Lyndhurst, Ohio. And it's going to be today, Sunday, only following interment. So the time is probably at about 1 o'clock or so, not before 1 o'clock, that would we be there. And if people would be inclined to give a donation, no one is obligated to, they could do so to the Geauga County Humane Society Rescue Village, which was a cause that was very dear in her heart. So at this moment now, we're going to please rise. We're going to say the memorial prayer. Then after the completion of the memorial prayer, we're going to get our things together. And what's going to happen is that we're going to have the pallbearers come forward. They will escort the casket with Doris, and then her family will follow behind the casket, going out the back of the room there. And then after, behind the family in the back room, then everyone else, the people who are in the room here, they'll fill in behind them and then go to their cars to continue with the rest of the service. So we'll first say the prayer in Hebrew, then English. El Malei Rachamim, Sheikhein Bamromim, Hamsei Menucha Nechoina, Al Kanfei Hashchina, B'malos Kedoshim Utahirim, Kezarakia Mazhirim Es Nishmas, Devar Amatul Bas Laser, Shahalacha Le'lama, Ba'avor Shanachnu Mispalim Bahar Haskras Nishmasa, Began Eden Tehei Menuchasa, Lechein Bal Harachamim, Yastirecho b'seisa kanafav le'olamim, v'yitzor b'tzor achayim es nishmasa, Adonai hu nachlasa, v'sanocha mishkava b'shalom, v'nomar Amen. O God, full of mercy, who dwells on high, grant proper rest on the wings of the divine presence, in the lofty levels of the holy and the pure ones who shine like the glow of the firmament, for the soul of our most beloved Doris, the daughter of Lewis, and who has gone into her world and for whom we pray. May her resting place be in the Garden of Eden, and may the Master of Mercy shelter her in the shelter of his wings for all eternity, and may he bind her soul in peace, in peace and the bonds of life. God is her heritage, and may she repose in peace on her resting place. And we say together, Amen. Okay, so we're going to have the pallbearers come forward. We're going to get our coats and things together.
Gentlemen, let me bring the casket to you.
Pallbearers, follow me, please. This way.
So if you're going to the cemetery, you'll return your cars, and please put on your flashing lights, and then we're going to Mount Sinai Cemetery. So, return.
Yeah, it's on the.
Get to the car. Thank you.
Thanks.